Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Krista Gallagher,
Oh,
and
Krista, I'm
I'm the
sorry,
vice
we're not
chair.
quite ready. If I need to announce that we're live on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, I believe that we are all right and ready to go. Thank you. I apologize for the interruption. Krista, go ahead.
Okay, hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight for this meeting for the Human Rights Commission. My name is Krista Gallagher, and I'm the vice chair person currently, and I am going to be running tonight's meeting with the help of Gretchen because Angelo is working tonight. So he might be joining by phone, I think, but he can't run the meeting tonight. So if anyone has any other suggestions or questions, please, go ahead. If you're okay with it, I'm going to start the meeting. Okay, and we'll start with introductions. So Mike, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike Waters, a commissioner from Ward 7. And I pass it to Bella.
Hi, I'm Bella, Commissioner from Ward 6, and I see David right next to me on the screen. So David, you're next.
Hi, I'm David Reinhold, resident of Polk County, and I will pass it off to Rita.
Hi, Rita Seong here. I'm the commissioner for Ward 8, and I'm going to pass that over to Tricarico.
Hey, Tricarico, Ward 2, quick question. If people want to see this, is the link on the city website or the YouTube city's channel?
Let's think for a second.
Tricarico, if you go to the top left-hand corner, there's a thing that says copy, where it says live on YouTube.
Thank you.
Click it and it'll say copy streaming link.
Thank you.
It's also on the city's webpage and our agenda and at the YouTube place.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it to Debbie.
Debbie Aguilar, Lieutenant with Salem Police, the liaison between the Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And I'll pass it to Nathan.
Nathan, you're on mute.
Maybe.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Nathan. I'm resident of Ward 7, and I'll pass it to Felicia. I think she's mute.
Felicia, we can't hear you.
Try to unplug and then plug back in your headphones. That might help.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
Felicia, we can't hear you anymore.
usually I just tap my laptop. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Nathan, any more tricks for Felicia?
I think unplugging it and then plugging it back in always works. I don't know, just mess with the audio jack or something. Something might not be connecting.
We still can't hear you, Felicia. Bria, do you have any suggestions for Felicia?
No, I'm with Nathan. I believe it's probably her audio jack or the connection that she's having challenges with.
What about Renee? I don't think we've heard from Renee yet.
Hi, everyone. Renee, resident of Ward 8. And I think Alex is here.
Alex, you're up next. So I have a suggestion while we're waiting for Alex, Gretchen, why don't you introduce Felicia while she's figuring out how to get her audio on?
Felicia Bechtold is here and is a member of the commission.
Fabulous. Alex, are you there yet? Unmuted?
I see Alex on the participant list,
Right, I see her as well.
but I don't see a microphone, so there may not be audio yet for Alex.
Oh, so why don't you introduce Alex as well?
Alexander Das is also a member of the commission.
Thank you. Angelo, are you there? I see him, but he is on mute. No?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. There you are, Angelo. Hi.
Yeah. Hello, I am the chair of the Human Rights Commission, resident of Ward 2, and I am currently working, so I'll try my best to be engaged with this meeting, but I thought it was important to have this meeting in times like this. So also thank you, Krista, for facilitating the meeting.
Fabulous.
Is there anybody who hasn't yet introduced themselves?
Renee, I don't think Renee has done it yet.
Oh, I thought I did, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still here, Renee, resident of Ward 8.
I think that might be everybody.
Yes.
I want to welcome Kathy Seckel. Kathy's with us and used to be a member of the Human Rights Commission and is visiting tonight.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Hi, Kathy.
I wanted to say that Wilma, or Oni, as you may know her, sends her regards. She says, please don't give up on her. She's working on a lot of things right now. And I have a statement from her that she asked me to read, so I'll share that later on. But she just wanted to let you all know she wanted to be here, but had another meeting at this time.
Well, great. I think, Krista, we can jump into the agenda if you like.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm feeling that this is going to be a very important meeting, of course, with all of our recent discussions with everything that's going on, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement and concerns. So I really appreciate everyone with their comments. We can go ahead to the next part of the agenda. The public comment part. If there's anyone who has any comments or open to discussion for anything, please go ahead.
I am checking my email one more time just to see if there's anything else. And I sent a PDF of items received. And let's see, I'm not seeing anything new that's come in.
Okay, so there's no one has public comments?
Unless Kathy would like to add something. I'm sorry, Kathy.
I have nothing to add right now. Just happy to be here.
So is this where we're all supposed to be talking, or are we talking about general comments from the public that have been submitted?
This was the placeholder in case we received any additional public comments from the general public. And I know you all also have the PDF document. I think, Krista, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the idea is to move into first a discussion about the events coming up, understand updates or kind of status of actions, and have some Q&A and move into kind of member remarks and reflections. But so that's my understanding of how the agenda is planned from working with Angelo and Krista.
Well, I guess then if there are no public comments, then we should move on farther along the agenda to the calendar, the consent calendar. Because Gretchen, would you mind actually taking over this aspect? Because I'm still trying to figure out how to get this to work.
Of course, this is a simple just approval of the agenda. And I think we could probably do that with a simple thumbs up for everybody who would like to approve the agenda. I think we can make it real simple this evening. Would someone like to thumbs up an approval of a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Great. And then anyone in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Okay, got that done. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. So we're going to look at number 4, issues related to racial injustice, current issues. There are many events happening in Salem that we're all aware of. And I would like to be able first to discuss part of the recent events from last weekend and just see if we have any opportunity for the Human Rights Commission for we as members to participate or support this, or what this looks like for us. I just want to know what your thoughts are. And Triarico, sorry, I'm saying that wrong.
Tricarico, it's tricky, I know.
Tricarico, okay, thank you. So I want to know if you want to share any kind of update with us, please.
Yeah, so I went to the event on the 6th. It was great. There was a lot of speakers, a lot of great conversation. I've been in contact with the people who are organizing the one that's coming this Saturday on the 13th, as well as the one that's happening on the 20th, which is led by Wilma or Oni. Both events are kind of geared towards conversation. You know, what are the next steps in the community? What are people wanting to do? They all have speakers, most of which are local Black leaders in the community. I think it would be really great for the Human Rights Commission to at least make a statement in support of these things, or at the very least be there. I know that there's people having booths, there's people handing out flyers. Of course, with all the social distancing guidelines, you know, I don't expect anyone to put their health at risk. I will be there in a different capacity because I'm just involved with so many things. There's no way I can wear both hats. So I would really like to have someone there. I can share I think Gretchen shared the Facebook event so you can get an idea of the time. But yeah, I think it'd be great for us to be there. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know since I've been involved with both events.
Thank you very much. And do you have any thoughts about what our role is as the Human Rights Commission in terms of involvement? Should we have a booth? What are your thoughts on how we can represent ourselves?
I mean, there's so much discussion happening about the community, about the police force. I think at the very least, we should be there as a resource so that if someone does have a complaint about an interaction they have with a police officer, we're offered as a resource, as well as, you know, any other incidents of racism or bias. I mean, that's what we do, right? I think it would also be powerful for us to just make a statement reminding that that's what we're here for, you know, and share that we're a resource with the community and that we're here listening to these concerns, right? Like, again, part of our job is listening to concerns about, you know, bias or hate crimes or any of those things. And there's going to be a lot of discussion around those topics. So I think it's important for us to be there to offer our support and see how we can help, because that's exactly what the point of these events is to hear what's going on, listen, decide what's next.
The only clarification I might offer, and I'm probably splitting hairs, but just in case there's any misunderstanding, of course, our area is to take complaints in the work of bias, discrimination, those kinds of things. A general police complaint would be outside, like if somebody had an issue with a traffic stop, for example, that would follow the general police complaint process. There's a rigorous internal affairs process, and then unresolved complaints from that aren't resolved through that then move into the community police review board. So just, making that distinction, we're here on bias and on discrimination, and racial injustice is our area. But that probably was obvious. I just wanted to double check, for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly offer that and explain that distinction so that people understand, what the roles are and how to use the right resource.
Certainly.
I have a question based on your comment, Gretchen. Is there crossover between Human Rights Commission and the Community Police Review Board in terms of either membership or any kind of information sharing that happens between those two boards? Just thinking through, I think that board probably deals with a wide variety of complaints, not just complaints of discrimination or bias, but really as a group, we are trying to develop our expertise in bias. And I'm just curious if there's any of that crossover, or maybe even education and training around discrimination and bias for that Community Police Review Board.
Thank you. I'm thinking about the different things you said, and certainly training in diversity, equity, inclusion is part of what the Community Police Review Board is interested in, just as you are. And that's a common, a shared value. So when you talk about crossover, that's a shared value. Also, one thing that both have in common is that desire for assessment of concerns, and for there to be a good, fair process in place to address issues, complaints, concerns, and I work with both boards, so that's helpful in kind of seeing when something comes in, maybe where it fits. Hate crime, Human Rights Commission, issue with police misconduct, that's police internal affairs, and then Community Police Review Board. So I'm able to kind of sort appropriately. I don't know if I completely answered your question, but.
That's helpful. I just wonder if a lot of the education and things that we learn as an organization, makes it over that way, because I think as a police review board, there's probably, and I'm just guessing because I've never been to a meeting, but I'm guessing there's like a wide variety of issues that they deal with, and it's not always a specific bias or human rights complaint. So I'm just curious a little bit more about what kinds of complaints maybe that board looks at, and if they have experience with discrimination type complaints.
Thank you. They are set up to hear a wide variety of types of complaints. A trespass complaint, a property crime complaint, an forced entry complaint, excessive force, any of those topics are the sorts of things that could come their way. I've been staffing it now approximately 5 years, and I don't recall the board receiving and working on a complaint that relates to bias or discrimination. The ones that would have come into the department would have been resolved at that level, or the person just chose not to bring it forward, because the process begins with an investigation at the department level. And then if that's unsatisfactory, then the board is an option. And we haven't had any progress up there in the time that I've staffed it that I can think of anyway right now. I think that if there's one of the things that would be really interesting, I think right now in these discussions, is to be learning about some of the tools and important pieces of information that you think are important in training that could be offered to the board, as well as getting to some of the work at City Council the other day. Councilor Nordyke introduced a motion that was approved at the council meeting you might be aware of, that will initiate diversity, equity, and inclusion training for the members of City Council and for the department directors at the city. And certainly will want to be informed with ideas, content, things like the equity lens work that Tricarico is beginning to research. Those are the kinds of things that can be informative to that. So is one of the potential outgrowths I thought of this conversation is for you to be helping us have some good information to feed into that.
I got something to ask. Here are the thoughts that have been percolating in my head over the last few weeks. I am going to split them into immediate concerns, short-term concerns, and long-term. Immediate is we have protests going on now, and we have protests based on a very, very important, pertinent, and ongoing issue that has been ongoing for too long of a time. My concern is this: as human rights commissioners, I don't believe that we have shown up at all to add our voice to the racism that has happened in this country against our Black brothers and sisters. What struck me is this. I was reading the PDF that you sent us, Gretchen, on public comments for June special meeting. What stuck out is a number of things. The concern of us citizens about the fact that there are armed residents in the area. And the other thing that stuck out is the message or the letter or email from the owner of Book Bin. And it starts with, "Dear Salem Human Rights Commission, I don't know where you were last Saturday and Sunday nights, but I know exactly where I was." Now that struck me. That struck me because we have a citizen of this town or this city saying, "I don't know where you were." So for me, that is at least one citizen who is talking about our absence in this very, very important movement. And that concerns me as a Human Rights Commission. So I would like us to talk about what do we plan to do and what do we believe our role should be in the situation of the protest that is happening now. I was there last Saturday and I was there representing myself because I wasn't even clear as a Human Rights Commission where we as a commission stand in relation to this. I saw that the Sikh community has set up a tent to feed people. Our Human Rights Commission tent was obviously very, very clearly missing. And for me, I am very saddened by that. The short term is, what do we as commissioners, or what do we as a Human Rights Commission, as a group, what role do we play in bringing the community together? What role do we play in helping a dialogue between the police and the NAACP, for example, and the protesters? Do we play a role there? Do we actively want to play a role there in getting the three key voices to come to the table? And in the long term, what kind of activities are we going to put in place to ensure that some of the very, very valid concerns are being raised? If you look at what Gretchen has sent us in the PDF, there are at least two public comments that talks about the presence of armed citizens and how the armed citizens are in a way given better treatment than the unarmed citizens. I am paraphrasing very badly here. And for me, that actually stuck a big part in my conscience, because if our residents are having that kind of a perception where there is unfair treatment based on whether you are armed or not armed, that is very concerning for our small little city. So where do we as commissioners stand on that? And there was even a letter from somebody who said that she was scared to go into her apartment because there were armed men standing in front of her apartment. And for me, that shows that this is not the kind of safe city that we want the city to be. And we set up this commission because we wanted this city to be inclusive of everybody. And the fact that somebody cannot get into their home because of presence of armed residents is very, very concerning. And it points to a lack of safety. The fact that the owner of Book Bin had to stand there and guard his store is very concerning as well. So immediate term, where do we stand? Short term, what do we do? Long term, what should we be doing? So those are the questions that I have for us today.
This is Bella, if I may. Thank you, Rita, for bringing up those concerns. I feel like I share very similar concerns, and at our last meeting, I did not speak up because I was also unclear about what our role is. And now that you've brought up this question to the entire commission, I think part of our role really should be, encouraging City Council, encouraging City of Salem Police Department, and other organizations that have power over our citizens to pledge, solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, or at the very least ensuring that they are not going to be using racist practices, and also holding people accountable to those racist practices. And I know, Debbie, at the last meeting, I brought up the fact that City of Salem Police Department has not released a statement saying those exact words. I don't know if there has been a response to that, but I guess, as a part of having this open dialogue, wanting to find out what if any response exists. Another thing that I would really think is important for us to do as a commission is to explicitly stand in solidarity with this movement, to say that we as commissioners agree with this, agree with the movement and want to support it, and we'll do what we can to support it. The only thing that I'm thinking about is in discussing past topics, right? The question has come up multiple times about, how do we balance out what we feel is right, what we want to do, with how City Council also moves forward with items on their agenda, right? Because we know that we're not like a federally protected organization or group. We are created by statute, and so I'm putting that concern out there. I don't have an answer for it, but I do really feel like we should, at the very least, continue to reach out to different organizations and also release our own statement.
There's a lot in what everyone just said, and I'm hoping I'm capturing it in the notes. Thank you all for your thoughts so far. I think just to help track, ideas include being present this weekend, contributing in to the conversation, making a statement, getting the voices together at the table, a statement like what Bella was just discussing with SPD. It might help to say some of the things that have been happening, as that, I think that's part of what was on the agenda in mind with number B. It might help to kind of proceed with some of the activities that have been happening. Like you may know, for example, the Salem-Keizer NAACP is initiating ongoing dialogues with area law enforcement and cities as a regular conversation. So those entities are certainly already gathered at tables and having conversations. I know that on Monday evening, several counselors released a statement, a document into the council, for example, that encourages to ensure that there's a systematic review of policies and training. And so that is underway. right now as a result of council direction on Monday. A statement came out from the department and the city and the NAACP, and there's components to that. There was a proclamation issued as well, but I'm moving kind of quickly because I don't want to take up too much time, but just to kind of put some of that context into place a little bit. And I think we've, well, yeah, I want to pause and see if Debbie wanted to jump in there, because I know Bella was speaking specifically about a statement. And so I didn't know if you wanted to, at that moment, clarify that part of Bella's question.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Gretchen mentioned, the chief has issued actually several statements, both individually as well as jointly with Mayor Bennett and with the NAACP. And in those statements, he really has focused his thoughts on where he stands, where Salem Police stands. And I have some excerpts from those that I think I want to pull out to really point to what you were talking about, Bella. In the joint statement that the city, the chief, and the NAACP put out, the first statement or the first sentence of that is, "We are people and organizations in Salem who strive for true justice, real freedom, and equality." And that truly is what the Salem Police Department stands for, along with the city and the NAACP. And then they actually end with a statement that says, "Those in charge must be told face to face the status quo is not acceptable. Black lives matter, not just on paper, but in life. Our lives should not be at risk simply because they are Black." So both the chief and Benny Williams, and then also the mayor, all worked together on that statement. They all signed off on it. They all stand with that statement. I think that those two sentences really are representative of what the city of Salem believes. And then the chief issued a statement. He's issued a couple, but one specifically to the citizens. And I can't recall what day it came out. I want to say it was a couple of days ago. And it ends with these lines. "In carrying out our mission to the community, we assure you the Salem Police Department recognizes the value and sanctity of human life and the inherent dignity of everyone." We absolutely condemn police brutality. The events that happened back east, we do not agree with. We absolutely agree in equity in policing. We have policies and procedures in place that specifically state that if we find that anyone is not equitable, if anyone is considering race when they are policing, that it does go to an internal affairs investigation, and our internal affairs investigator is the one who investigates those. So I know that those aren't necessarily in your exact words, but I think that the feeling and the thought behind it and the intent behind it is there. The chief absolutely, I have no doubt, will speak again to the community. What he says and what that message is and when it happens, I can't say, but I do know that he does want to keep a dialogue open with the community, with community leaders, so that we can move forward, that we can learn from this, that we can be educated by the community on what the community wants us to know, what the community wants us to learn. So I don't know, does that kind of answer a little bit?
Lieutenant Aguilar, thank you. Do you hear me?
You're here.
Oh, excellent. I would like, thank you for highlighting those remarks. I have a follow-up question on this specifically. I was curious to understand what actions the chief police or the leadership at the Salem Police Department took regarding this incident, apart from the statements and the remarks and the interest to have an open dialogue with the community. I'm curious what actions have been taken regarding this situation with the police officer, and from what I'm understanding, also with his command. I mean, from the remarks that I saw it online.
Are you talking about the video?
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that officer, so he actually, to let you know, he is my sergeant. He works directly for me, although that night we were all working under one command. But so I know him both personally and professionally. After that video came out, we talked with him, not me in particular, but my supervisor spoke with him about how his words had an effect on the community, that, and my boss and everyone owned it as command, that we did not properly educate him on all the nuances of the curfew, so that if he were questioned about, can we do this? Can we do this? What does this particular phrase mean out of public? That he was prepared to answer those questions. His intent that night was to get people off the street. We contacted that group just like we contacted other groups throughout the city. Those contacts weren't captured on video. This one was, but our message was the same. Is we wanted people to leave. We wanted people to go home. However, he did not realize that if he told people to go into their cars, that would not be sufficient enough to be covered under the curfew, that you actually had to be out of the public. But his message to that group was the same message as we gave to other groups, which was the curfew is going to be in effect. The curfew is in effect. We want you to leave. So as far as what actions were taken, the officer was educated on what that curfew meant, along with the other officers that were going to be out in subsequent nights while the curfew was in effect. So they understood exactly what that meant, exactly what was a violation. I will say that we did not arrest anyone just based on a curfew violation. Everyone who was arrested were charged with other additional crimes other than trespass, which trespass is the official arrest or the official charge for a curfew violation. They were all, the people that were arrested were charged with riot and other crimes. So does that kind of explain it?
I think it explains a part of it. One thing that I particularly noted was specifically the remark that the police officer said, so that they don't look like they're playing favorites. That was, so my question related, the actions was more related to, was related specifically to that, you know, police, you know, the remarks that we shouldn't play favorites with this group or with that, with the other group, or so yeah. So I was wondering about actions related to this specific remark.
Yes, had I wished different words would have been used, because we don't want to play favorites with anyone. I mean, my words would have been, you need to leave, because we need everybody to leave. We need everyone to go home. The curfew is in effect. We will give you so much time and then you need to leave. You know, he chose to phrase it in that manner. He felt horrible that it was interpreted as him playing favorites, because he certainly does not play favorites one way or another to any particular group. So, I mean, as far as an explanation, I can't say why he chose to say that particular phrase. He certainly stands by, he was not playing favorites. He was trying to diffuse a situation and get people who were armed off the streets in the safest manner possible. Without any kind of violence.
I don't want to interrupt, but I wonder if I can add. I don't mean to interrupt you though.
Yeah.
I had I might offer some additional information in case it helps on this particular topic. And would ask you to kind of bear with me a minute because I know I've been talking to a lot of people about the sentence and really understand. But I wonder, I have also talked with people who have a really different perspective and role at the event, like people who were there to protest or to stand up for injustice, and who also heard kind of a similar message. So I wonder how it's experienced to kind of try on the sentence if you're a different, if you're someone there as a Black Lives Matter member or as a protester and you're hearing, I think that one of the things that I'm hearing, and I don't mean to speak for anybody, but one of the things I'm hearing is the intent around kind of a friendly, cooperative style of connecting with all of the participants without regard for their particular viewpoint or perspective, but more trying to help encourage cooperation with what the action was that was needed. And so when I was hearing examples of people who kind of had similar conversations but represented a different part of the participants, I was thinking about just that overall style. And I understand that's part of working with a crowd and trying to keep things calm. That can be an approach that's taken, as opposed to more of a adversarial style. And I mean, I would completely defer to police who understand it differently, but sometimes there's a technique in voice and style and friendliness that can engender cooperation that can be applied across the board with all the participants. But in case that's helpful, I wanted to offer that.
If I could, Gretchen, I definitely agree. I think, in working in crisis situations, you really have to assess the situation and utilize the skills that you have. I think the concern, especially that I have, is that amidst the, what's happening throughout our nation, knowing how accessible recordings are, not being mindful about those things gives people the impression that there is favoritism. And that's a really important thing to remember. And I guess if anything, that's the one thing that I encourage, that I really, really would like to see from the Salem Police Department, is to own and I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, right? But in this instance, in future instances, really owning what happened and saying, hey, this was, a situation that was caught on camera. It's bad. We know the message that it puts out, and this is what we're going to do to move forward. And also, Debbie, I really want to thank you for bringing the statement that was released in collaboration with the NAACP and Mayor Bennett. You're right, Gretchen, you're very right. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. And I think, just a huge part in helping us as a commission, I feel, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's my personal opinion, a huge part in making us as a commission and our community know where we stand in protecting, all of our citizens equally, is making sure that the message gets put out there, more so than what we hear about, people destroying property, and that's who we villainize in this situation, right? And the other thing too that weighs heavy on me, because I do respect the work that first responders and police do, but I have heard from different law enforcement officers here in Salem about tensions within coworkers, specifically tensions within white coworkers against Black or people of color. And also seeing a lot about the Blue Lives Matter movement, or, response to Black Lives Matter. And so my hope is that there can be some really good conversations about why Blue Lives Matter is not a response to Black Lives Matter. Again, I do respect all the work that law enforcement officers do, but a part of ensuring that we are, as a community, respecting the lives of the people who are most at risk, right, at this point in time, is that we have those really hard conversations. So I really, Debbie, want to thank you because I know this is not an easy conversation to have, and we're going to have a lot harder conversations because everyone in this group is very passionate about helping people. And I recognize how tough of a situation you're in. And so I'm just going to thank you in advance for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tell you that I don't think anyone wants to have this conversation more than the police department. We want to do the right thing. It's very difficult for us to get, we will own our behavior. It is difficult for us to get lumped in to the behavior of bad officers who do things thousands of miles away. We don't want to see that happen here. And so, yeah, we do want to work with the community. You know, we've worked with NAACP for years, and I've worked personally with Mano a Mano and other organizations. But I think that we recognize through this that sometimes there are other stakeholders outside of those organizations that want to have a voice in it. And so we're looking for ways to connect with those folks who maybe aren't part of NAACP or Mano a Mano, but want to have a seat at the table. And how do we do that with thousands of members of that community? We can't have face-to-face with all, but how do we bring everyone together?
So I would like to say something. I really appreciate this dialogue. I appreciate Bella bringing up ownership, because there is now a second video showing favoritism by Salem Police. So I appreciate you acknowledging that this conversation is harder. It is hard. However, what's harder is people dying. And frankly, you need to have those difficult conversations to prevent that. I'm very, very concerned about a pattern of bias that's happening. You know, I have people messaging me because they know about my position and they're wanting something to do, want us to actually do something about it. I'm grateful that I think because of the environment that we actually have people listening in a way that I don't think they would listen before. So I want to try really hard to make that message one that people can hear, because I understand that when we talk about these things, it's really easy to kind of shut down and not listen to what's being said. But I need to say that diversity and inclusion training will not prevent police brutality. You know, the efforts thus far by the chief or whoever tried to, you know, help in that situation did not result in less collaboration with groups that are screaming really awful things towards minorities and residents in Salem. Oregon's now famous for that. We've been on BuzzFeed for it. And I hope that the police department takes their 15 minutes of fame and looks in the mirror. I want every police officer to do research about the history of the police system in the United States. It's rooted in violence and oppression of Black enslaved people. I want to believe the messages that I'm hearing from the chief and the officers, that they're listening and ready for change. That means it's their responsibility to make those changes. I am always willing to help and support, but I cannot force people to change who are not committed. We have so many resources in the community, as well as resources pouring out for anti-racism and anti-white supremacy leaders all over the world. I want to know specifically what the city of Salem, the police department, and anyone holding a public commission position is going to do to fight racism and white supremacy. Especially, we need to denounce it and fight it within our public organizations, within our community, and when it shows up with a gun in downtown Salem. We know that violence against marginalized people in our community are increasing due to the current administration in the White House. We are already seeing these armed militia groups take it upon themselves to terrorize biracial families, simply trying to take a camping trip. If we do not fight white supremacy, this trend will continue. This will take more than a workshop. It will take continued ongoing, lifelong efforts to unlearn the harmful and violent behaviors of white supremacy. Those who aren't willing to make that commitment have no business making policies, enforcing laws, or otherwise holding positions that impact the lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Now, that's my personal statement. I will read Wilma's statement. She says, it is a difficult topic and we need to keep having these moments in time where it arises. How can we move towards this conversation together? How do we move forward in this conversation? It's really important that we find reasons to talk about it and make it a part of what's next. And in that conversation, in that discomfort, the Black experience will start to heal and the white experience will start to heal. And the answers to our questions about what's next will make themselves known through the hearts and minds of those of us gathered. Is the trauma that we've all experienced due to systems that we were born into and conditioned into, and how that's harmed us in so many ways. To heal a nation, we have to open the wound and touch the wound and begin to heal together. When we begin to heal, then and only then will we be able to show up in the work of dismantling harmful, oppressive systems and create new systems, learning to care, addressing our trauma as humankind individually and collectively. Get in touch with what's inside and know that that's a part of the journey, not the whole journey. Those conversations are a lifestyle, a way of being in life. In order for humanity to rise together, we have to stick with what needs attending to, not give up, ask questions, and ask instead of assume. We need to grieve for what's been lost, who's been lost, and repair the fabric of our connection to ourselves and one another.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, David.
Okay, so this is David Reinhold.
Thank you, Trika Rico. I just want to say something too.
Okay.
Krista wanted to go ahead and say something.
Go ahead, Krista, and then after that we will have David.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying thank you, Tricarico. I was thinking Mike had his hand raised, so I don't know if he wanted to say something.
So shall we go over to David now?
David, yeah.
Okay, there you go, David.
So I understand, I actually saw both videos, and in both videos, I think the officers, said some things that could have been said a little bit differently. But I was going to tell you my personal experience with the Salem Police Department. So I was on the Salem Police Review Board for 4 years, and I just came off it in December. I also went to the Salem Police Academy, or Citizens Police Academy, which is a 16-week academy that the Salem Police Department puts on. And they put you through a lot of training scenarios. I mean, we're driving police cars, we're able to shoot guns, we're going through conflict simulations, we're doing a lot of different things. One of the responsibilities to be on the Salem Police Review Board is we have to do ride-alongs. And so I've been on, I think, 8 or 9 ride-alongs. And when I go on a ride-along, I'm with an officer for about 8 to 9 hours. So, and every single ride-along I've been on is with a different officer. And so you kind of get the culture, you understand the culture, and, I would say the culture of the Salem Police Department is, from what I've learned, is they do own. I would say that being on the Police Review Board, you know how many cases we had? 0 in 4 years. The other thing is community policing. Salem is really well known for good community policing. I'll tell you a little situation that happened. I think it was a couple of years ago. The country of France was trying to improve their community policing, and they picked 2 locations in America to learn how to do better community policing. And one of them was the city of Salem. I was in that meeting with Gretchen and Mayor Bennett and some other people from the Police Review Board. And the Federal Police Agency of France came over here and talked to us. And we asked them, how did you pick the city of Salem? And they said, because Homeland Security recommended you. On the west coast of Mississippi, Salem Police Department is known for the best community policing in the nation.
So I really appreciate you sharing that because I do think that there are good things happening. However, those good things don't negate the bad things. I've heard some really, really awful things from people who have experienced really bad things from the Salem Police Department, and I've encouraged them to come forward. But, you know, part of the problem with the process is it can be confusing. It can be alienating to people. That's one of the big complaints. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm not saying that, you know, everything is terrible and awful and police are out there killing people in Salem. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is that there are still problems. We owe it to the people of Salem and in our roles to listen to what they're saying and not negate that with talking about how great Salem Police Department is. We can say, hey, we are a great police department and we're committed to listening and doing better. But when you share things like that, it comes off as invalidating. And I think it would be really frustrating for a person who's experienced like negative handling by Salem police to hear you say that. And I hope you can understand that. I'm trying to help you understand how that comes across, right?
Okay. I'm not trying to be invalidating. I was just trying to show some other stuff that might go behind the scenes or a different perspective. That's all.
Right. And I'm hearing the complete opposite behind the scenes. So again, I'm not saying that nothing good is happening. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that we still need to do more. I'm saying we have the unique opportunity to get people to listen. I genuinely believe the police are listening. And I'm really, really excited about that because I feel like 2 weeks ago, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation. So I want to take advantage of that and really do some real work.
I know Mike wants to jump in. I have to say though, I think this is where it's so important to be precise with, you know, perspectives, conclusions. I mean, I think everyone has unique experiences. There's 1,000 and 1,000,000 different interactions, and it's so helpful to really drive into precision. I'm also hoping that we can learn how to make processes less alienating, but I jumped in ahead of Mike, so I need to hand the baton to Mike.
Mike, after you, can I say something, please?
I wanted to kind of validate both David.
Hold on 1 second. Chris is saying, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask if everyone please try to remember to use your name first before you speak. I can't follow who's talking. I have to be able to have the interpreter, or I have the interpreter large, so it's hard for me. I have to find who's talking and kind of go back and forth. So if you can say your name first before you start speaking, please. And then back to you, Mike.
This is Mike. I wanted to validate both Tricarico and David in the sense that this is one of those big situations where multiple things can be true. It can be true that we have one of the best police forces in the nation, one of the most recognized for community policing, and because we're in the United States of America, where the history of policing is pretty challenging, right? That maybe one of the best police forces in the nation still isn't good enough. And I think that that's a little bit of what we're experiencing right now. I wanted to kind of take the focus a little bit off of the officer's particular behavior that night, because you could talk about that kind of all day long and what the officer did or didn't do. I think what was compelling for me as a community member was actually the chief's statement the next day. I found this statement to be both made me both joyful in some senses because he was addressing the issue and he was being very direct. But there were a couple of places in the statement that really gave me pause as a community member, because the chief in 2 places in the statement seemed to draw a parallel between Black Lives Matter's protesters and armed militia people who showed up in our downtown in order to intimidate them. And there is no parity between those kinds of individuals. There's also no parity between Second Amendment political activity and what those people were doing that night. They were not exercising their Second Amendment political beliefs. They were there guarding businesses and creating an environment of intimidation that only heightened the violence that was, sort of foretold a moment of violence in our city. So I was deeply disappointed in those elements of the chief's statement. And I thought that they stood in stark contrast to the beautiful statement that was made with the NAACP. And so I leave that week just feeling very troubled, because I recognize that these are generally good people, and you can be a very good person and be racist, because we live in a racist society. So I struggle with, how can we have this conversation with the police, recognizing that I know, and I know Debbie too, we've met so many times, that y'all are just doing your best, but we have to recognize that sometimes your best isn't good enough, and that we have to get better. And so I hope that that's the foundation that we can spring from, and recognize and validate as well, David, your bravery in sharing your experiences with the police, and that those were positive experiences, because it reminds us that there is the possibility of change. And I think that that is critically important as well. So thank you. And Bella, I think you are next.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I really want to echo, part of what Chikerico said about what makes this conversation hard to have, and what makes people, go down different rabbit holes and lose focus, is the piece where we can sometimes feel like we're being attacked when things are being talked about. And this conversation, the entire Black Lives Matter movement is not to say that all police officers are bad, right? We need to address that there are some things that are learned, right? People bring their own biases and their own prejudices into this field, and they are in a position where they have power to act on the community, right? And we have some really bad officers who are doing really bad things, but then when the community calls for accountability, then what I have seen is people who support police unconditionally fighting back and not wanting to hear the conversation happening. And so, David, just like Mike said, I want to echo your appreciation in you sharing your experiences. And I do think that law enforcement do a lot of really good things for the community. And if I could share with you all the times that I've been pulled over by police, or I've been approached by different law enforcement officers, for them assuming that I was doing something something wrong. I mean, you would probably not believe me. And so I really want for us to focus our efforts in not who's right and who's wrong, or getting so caught up in the defensiveness, and talking more about what steps we can take to help our Salem Police Department and help our community really focus on the issue at hand. And the issue at hand that should not get lost is that Black Lives Matter, and that Black people are being killed at disproportionate rates by people in power.
I'm next. I really do echo what Mike and Bella had just said. It takes a lot of courage from all of us to come to the table and talk. And I really appreciate David sharing his experiences. And I really appreciate David being so candid about what happened. What I see is this. We have a situation where David is sharing that there's been 0 complaints. We have, on the other hand, Chikerico saying that she has heard of many horrible things that has happened. When I hear 2 opposing things like that, my instinct or my hypothesis is that something is broken somewhere, because I'm not doubting both. I'm saying that if there is 0 complaints, and if another person is saying, I've heard a lot of things that are not necessarily good, then it means that somehow those things that are on the ground, reality is not being surfaced up. And we gotta understand why it is not being surfaced out. Why do people not report? Why do people not come forward and say what has happened to them? So what is the barrier there? So to the point of training, I agree training will only get you so far. It is a more deeply ingrained situation where we have to say, instead of just training, what expectations do we set in written form for the police department? That we say these are the things that are not acceptable. The training part of it is very important, but I think the written expectation is also very important. And to a third thing, I really, really appreciate how the Salem police has come forward and made the necessary statements, but I do agree with Mike that there are some things that are very worrisome. When I was at the march last Saturday, I was very, very much appreciative of how the Salem police had taken the decision to march together with the protesters. So from my viewpoint, I see efforts by the Salem police to actually actively, very fast, do something about it. And that is good. What I don't want us to lose sight of is there's a momentum going now. How do we keep that momentum going? And what is our role as commissioners in this? How do we make sure that the positive steps that are being taken by the police department continues? And how do we make sure that our residents feel comfortable enough to come forth and report the things that they have experienced? For example, Bella is talking about the number of times that she had been stopped. If she hasn't said that here, we wouldn't have known that. And so the police department wouldn't have known that. So, and if the police department hasn't known that, how is the police department going to take action on something that they do not know? So we have to have a communication between the residents and the police department so that we lay it out on the table what reality is for both parties and hear and listen to the realities of both. And what role do we as commissioners have in bringing those two groups together? And I know that wonderful things already happened between NAACP and the Salem police. If I were not a part of this commission, I wouldn't have known that. So what kind of things are we communicating out to the Salem public or residents that we take this very seriously? And these are the actions that NAACP and the Salem police have taken. And these are the additional things that we will do moving forward. So that way we can actually reassure our residents that we are not just talking, but we are actively doing something. And I think people need to hear that right now.
Gosh,
So back to what Bella is saying, what statement are we going to make as human rights commissioners on this? And I think, and my honest feeling is that we are slow in terms of making a statement, but make a statement we must. And we got to be fast now.
Well, if I may, it sounds like Wilma's statement might be something that's written that might have captured many, but I'm really drawn to your conversation near the end here where you're talking about how can we help hear the issues, and aren't we in a position as the human rights, as commissioners, you're liaisoning with organizations, you're developing relationships, you're raising awareness about the complaint process and about the intent to try to remedy bias. Can we somehow have this conversation to figure out, well, what falls apart when we continue to not hear of the issues? You know, maybe can we somehow improve in that area? It would be lovely if that could come out of what you're all saying.
So I'm thinking about the immediate again. Say if we as human rights commissioners do show up at the protest this Saturday and we have our tent up with a table with our little thing that says Human Rights Commission. If we have that table up, what should be on that table? Should it be our standard flyers, or should it be information about what the city is doing now, what the city plans to do in the future? Because we need to be able to inform our residents that things are actually happening and that the city is not just being quiet.
I think the city is working on that messaging, and I, just as a member of the staff at the mayor and city manager's office, can certainly carry carry that part back. You know, I'm in some meetings tomorrow to that effect, and I know both the Salem Police Department and the City of Salem have been working on trying to communicate information, and will continue to do so. So I can certainly be carrying that forward and try to convey that. I think it would be really difficult in 2 days' time
I know.
to translate all of that to the Human Rights Commission table. I feel like your contribution could be sharing with people that we want to hear when there's issues of bias, when there's issues of racial injustice, when our communities of color are treated unjustly. We're here to hear that and examine it and remedy it and work alongside with you and work to resolve that. We have our complaint forms, we have our process for reporting incidents and crimes, and we're here to receive that stuff, you know? So I would think that would be important at the table. The city can continue to talk about the policies, the review of policies, possible changes of policies. That's going to be what the city needs to do and the department needs to do.
Krista has a question as well, or something to say. I just wanted to say, hi, I have some questions about the event. Do we have enough brochures and everything like that? Because I know that we had people who were planning to go. If we can pick up some brochures at City Hall and maybe have like a laptop or something, or we can have things we can pass out, I think that would be a good way so people know how to contact us. What do you guys think?
I think another important thing that, oh, this is Bella, I'm sorry. Another important thing that we should have for anyone who's able to table on Saturday is having information about if they do want to report bias incidences by police. You know, so really working together to make sure that people know that we're here, and for a part of the reason that they are there, that they also have access to be able to take steps that they need if they want to report bias incidences.
Right. I think that's it. That's important. The reason why I'm speaking up in terms of what we should be having on the table is, if I imagine myself doing the tabling on Saturday, and I can picture a lot of people coming up and say, what are you human rights commissioners doing about this, right? I will not have an answer on that. And two, we can encourage people to bring that to the attention of the Human Rights Commission through the proper channels. And for me, the channel that I have is I always hand out Gretchen's card to everybody and say, call her. But for us to connect the people who come up to the table with the police if they have issues, I think that is also a good thing. That's my belief anyway. What do the rest of you think?
So can I interrupt real quick,
Yes.
Gretchen? Sorry, I had to switch to my phone because something was going on with my computer, so I missed a big chunk. But so Rita, were you saying that having a police officer at the human rights booth?
No.
Or having just documents that say how to, if you've been a victim of like racial profiling or anything, how you can file a complaint?
That is the how-to. The how-to is what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Because I am not sure at this point in time whether it would be a good thing or a not so good thing to have the police department present at the tent for the human rights group. And I see Trikariko shaking her head. Mike, you got something?
I wanted to ask a question about complaint process. We talked about how police complaints go through internal review. Is that the same as if a complaint about a police officer were delivered directly to you, Gretchen, in your role as human rights officer? Would you then immediately refer that to police, or would you investigate that independently?
With the cooperation of the individual person, I would work to try to connect with the police department. I independently, for example, can't pull data on traffic stops, for example. But I certainly have people who come who arrive intentionally that like don't want to initiate at the police department. And then I sometimes will ask questions, relay information back and forth, facilitate introductions, and try to help with a person getting the information they need. But ultimately, to really do a thorough and precise investigation, we work with the police department who will have that information and be able to do that. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I mean, yeah.
It just occurs to me that all of our literature talks about how to report bias incidents either to the Human Rights Commission or the police. What it doesn't really describe in any of the pieces that I've worked on is how to report when that bias you believe is from a police officer. I don't think that we have anything in our tabling materials. And I don't imagine that we can quickly create that by Friday or by Saturday, but I do think if we're going to materials that are about reporting bias, that it should explicitly share how to report bias from a police officer if you have experienced that.
Well, the police department certainly has information about how to report concerns including bias. That's already built out as part of the Salem Police Department. There's information on how
but the victims may or may not want to go to the police with a complaint about a police officer. They should be able to come to the Human Rights Commission and make that same complaint. And I am a little concerned when I hear on the one hand that in 4 years of being on the Community Review Police Board, David never heard a complaint. And we're hearing from other people on the commission who are saying, oh yeah, it happens all the time. There's a disparity there. And so it is my feeling, and other commissioners can jump in, I don't want to take all the air out of the room tonight, but it is my feeling that our literature should be very opening and welcoming of people reporting to whomever on the commission or in any capacity what is happening to them so that we can get to the bottom of the problem.
I'd love help with that because that's certainly what I try to do in my role. I don't ever turn anyone away and just say, oh, you have to go downstairs. And if you're not comfortable with that, too bad. Of course not. I mean, I'll work hard to receive the information, find out the information that's needed to get to the bottom of the complaint, even if it's me kind of all the way through. And other times it's a simple introduction. And I think that I would love help and could really benefit from all of your assistance with figuring out that disparity, because I hear that too. And like I talk with people and we try to dig into, well, what led a person to not come forward? Sometimes it's things that we understand and are explained. Like I'll have someone say they were so dissatisfied with an experience, and then I talk with them and I realize, well, they wanted us to do something that's outside of our jurisdiction, for example. They thought because we're the state capital, we can fix something in another area. And it's like, okay, they're really disappointed in us, but that's nothing we can do anything about. Other times, there could be really legitimate things where people come forward and say, this was not okay. And if we can't realize that if we don't get the chance to learn the specific situation, when it was, where it was, who was involved, so that we can unpack it, So it doesn't help if we can't fix what we don't know about.
I think it's also really important to recognize that there's a fear in reporting for a lot of people. And so finding ways to make reporting easier, and also making it more accessible. Gretchen, I know that you can only do so much, in your efforts towards this. So that's my 2 cents. And I'm happy to work with anyone further.
I'd love help with that. I've had so many conversations along those lines. Oh, and this is Gretchen. Krista, I apologize. I'm doing exactly what we talked about not doing. This is Gretchen. But like, for example, I've had people make the suggestion, I want to make an anonymous complaint, for example, that is that is non-specific. And it's like, well, we can receive that as general feedback, for example, but we're limited in how much we can learn from that if we can't figure out what night, what officer, what was the context, because I think so much of the situations are contextual driven. So like, that's been one tip I've received, for example, is you can make reporting easier if I can just call in and let you know anonymously of what happened. And we can receive those things, and we do. And I always pass all of that on, but you know, I'd love to learn more about how to achieve that. I've been interested in that for years.
This is Bella. Gretchen, in response to that, I'm wondering if that's something that
And something too when you're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's something too that Salem Police can take on, in being the ones to inform the public on, hey, if this happens and you want to report anonymously, these are the steps that you can take, and then this is the person that you can contact. Because, you know, at some point, in order for healing to happen and in order for change to happen, they're going to need to take on some of that, take an active role in that, in saying it's okay for us to receive complaints.
Well, I have to interrupt just because I feel like I'm worried that there's a misunderstanding. They do receive complaints. They're a primary place, and they receive complaints at face-to-face, call, walk-in. There's no wrong door. And in fact, they take a higher percentage of complaints than many departments. There's departments, for example, that won't receive a rudeness complaint, for example, but Salem PD will. And so I don't in any way mean to imply they don't. I'm just explaining that we also help at the mayor and city manager's office out of that hope to make there be no wrong door. So
Right.
I apologize for the interruption.
No, I think that was maybe I was unclear on my part. I'm not denying that Salem Police receives complaints, but what I'm saying is that maybe the people who really do have issues that really need to be brought to the forefront are not comfortable making these complaints, especially because, you know, if any real action is to be taken, it really can't be anonymous. And so I'm wondering if that is something that can happen, where maybe Salem Police Department can take on the responsibility of, you know, maybe putting out a Facebook video or like a quick video about, hey, if this happens, this is who you can report it to. And then that can be something that the Police Review Board works on, since, you know, it's sounding like there's not a lot in that aspect, and kind of looking more at the trends of, you know, anonymous reporting and what's being reported then. Because if someone's not afraid to go through the internal investigation process, maybe for the reason of, you know, being undocumented, how are we ever going to hear those voices?
I think Debbie has something to say, and then I go after Debbie, right?
No, Krista's saying I want to turn to.
Who goes first?
No, sorry. I'm just trying to work through the agenda. I did see that Mike was also raising his hand. So I was thinking, Mike, Rita, I don't know. I'm having difficulty seeing everybody on the screen, but that's fine. I'll be happy to save a turn for later.
Debbie, you do have something to say and you want to go first? No? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I will go ahead. Thank you, Debbie. So this is my thinking. There are a number of things to do, and the list actually kept getting longer for us. The latest item on the list is, how do we bring the people and the police department together so that we have a good understanding of what people are actually experiencing. Now, I would say that that's an agenda item that needs us to talk through, because I am imagining myself as a person of color who gets stopped multiple times by the police. And if I'm expected to raise that to the police department itself, that itself for me would be a non-starter, because I am being stopped multiple times by a police who works for the police department. So I think that is a bigger issue that we as commissioners should table and come back and revisit, because I think there are more pressing things at play at this moment. One, let's agree on what kind of statement we as commissioners want to make. Two, let's decide on what's going to happen this Saturday. So those are the two immediate things. And Gretchen has a pretty nice idea. Can we use Oni's statement as the statement that we put our support behind and say, this represents what we want to say? So I'm going to pause there and get reaction to us saying, Oni speaks, the words that Oni is saying are the words that we totally support, and this is our statement.
This is Bella. I think we should get her permission to do that. And I also I feel like her statement was appropriate, but I think we should get permission.
Thank you, Bella. I have a tendency to steal things without asking permission.
This is Tricarico. I have a meeting with her tonight, so I can ask her about that and report back rather quickly. I know that doesn't necessarily solve everything, but I can probably get an answer quickly, and then we can decide from there, I guess, what to do. I don't know. Maybe we should have a backup statement.
Yes. And so that was what this is Rita. I keep forgetting to announce myself. I'm sorry. So the backup statement, who wants to put their hand up in terms of doing a backup statement just in case Oni doesn't give us permission? Who's a good writer?
I might offer an alternative way to look at it would be the statement I would imagine, and maybe I'm stating the obvious. This is Gretchen. The statement might be like, Commissioner Oni Marchbanks states, and her fellow commissioners stand in support with that statement. Like honoring that those were her words would probably be the way to roll into that. I know you all heard it just one time. It might be helpful to hear it a second time.
I can do that. Sorry, one sec. Okay. It's a difficult topic, and we keep having these moments in time where it arises. How can we move towards this conversation together? How do we move forward? How do we move forward in this conversation? It's really important that we find reasons to talk about it and make it a part of what's next. And in that conversation and in that discomfort, the Black experience will start to heal and the white experience will start to heal. And the answers to our questions about what's next will make themselves known through the hearts and minds of those of us gathered. Is the trauma that we've all experienced due to the systems that we were born into and conditioned into, and how that's harmed us in so many ways. To heal a nation, we have to open the wound and touch the wound and begin to heal together. Once we begin to heal, then and only then will we be able to show up in the work of dismantling harmful, oppressive systems and create new systems. Learning to care, addressing our trauma as humankind individually and collectively. Get in touch with what's inside and know that that's a part of the journey, not the whole journey. These conversations are a lifestyle and a way of being in life. In order for humanity to rise together, we have to stick with what needs attending to, not give up, ask questions, and ask instead of assume. We need to grieve for what's been lost, who's been lost, and repair the fabric of our connection to ourselves and one another.
This is Bella. I really like that statement. The one thing that I would like to add is our pledge as a commission. If we so decide to pledge, but I think it's important for us to also, assure the public that we are going to be here. We're going to be taking an active role in having these difficult conversations with, all the people that need to have these conversations. So that would be the only thing.
This is Rita. Totally agree with what Bella just said. I am thinking as part of the awareness campaign group that what we can do is to say, to leverage off that and say, if you have any experiences of discrimination, please call us or please contact us. And these are the contact numbers. Does that sound good, Megan Tricarico?
I agree. Sorry, this is Mike, and I agree.
This is Krista. And these are all very good conversations, and we need to continue, obviously, to have them. But I wanted to also continue with the meeting. I know that we have, before the end of this meeting, I think that we need to decide what we want. What is the goal from this meeting before we, move on? And I also have one more topic, and that's
and
that was
Lieutenant Debbie Aguilar.
Add to the conversation about the police, if there's anything for Lieutenant Aguilar before we move on, if there's anything that you would like to add.
Well, there's been a lot talked about, and I wouldn't disagree with anything that anyone has said, other than, Tricarico made the comment that the police department.
The baby lost you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, Tricarico made the comment that the police department has experienced 15 minutes of fame. And I can tell you that I would not wish this 15 minutes of fame on anyone.
This is Rita. Totally hear you on that, Debbie. So one of the things that we gotta think about as commissioners is how do we make sure that going forward, the police department doesn't get that kind of 15 minutes of fame, and that the 15 minutes of fame are actually really positive 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, this is Tricarico. I want to add, I really appreciate the conversations we're having about increasing accessibility to making complaints. But I also want to pose the question of why is it the citizens' responsibility to hold the police accountable? I think it needs to be a joint effort where the police are also holding themselves accountable. Again, that goes back to kind of the lifelong commitment that Oni talks about in her message to dismantling these systems. We know that the police system is built on some really problematic things that have been extremely harmful for hundreds of years. So that's going to mean some really big changes, and we need the police to hear that and work with us and be leaders and proactive in that change.
It seems like there's a lot of information sharing.
Ella, do you have something to say?
Oh, I apologize.
Belly didn't have anything to say? Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, no.
Okay, I guess this is Krista. I just feel like we brought a lot of good situations up, and I'm just hoping that we also can have these conversations in our next meetings. We have about 20 minutes left, so I wanted to hear from any of you guys, what are your goals for today's meeting? What do we want to do moving forward on Saturday, or what do we want to do? What do we want to involve with the event? What do we want to come up with? Do we want to write, or who wants to write the statement, or what is the statement? What do we want from this meeting?
This is Bella. So I think we have kind of already decided that if Wilma's okay with us using her statement, we'll do that, and that we'll use it. And then at the end of it, if it's okay with everyone to add those things that I had mentioned about, pledging to actively continue to do this work. From what I also recall, Gretchen, you wanted some help with conversations about accessibility, right? For making anonymous complaints.
Well, I think that's a whole conversation. I see a limitation in the efficacy of anonymous complaints. Yet I raise that as an example of what's raised as an idea to help make the process more accessible. But then on the other hand, it's hard to do a good job in investigating them if you don't have specifics. So that's an example of where I think really good dialogue can come into play, where we can roll up our sleeves and try to problem solve that together. I'd love to learn more about how to make the process more accessible and bring in some of the information about what's needed to have a robust and rigorous complaint investigation and see how to achieve it. But I think that's an example of the kind of next step. It's not as simple as just saying we can take anonymous complaints, because we can. It's just that we're limited in how good we can learn about them, you know?
Well, I think this is Bella. I think part of what we discuss is that if people are afraid to report, there is an inherent limitation in the investigation process. And I think what really we need to be able to reflect is that there are instances of discrimination happening, and just really being aware of the numbers. And so I would love to, outside of here, maybe have more conversations about that, and then eventually see if it's maybe something we can bring forward. So just as a going to Chris's question of what are we going to do, that is what I can recall will happen. Unfortunately, I am working on Saturday, and so I won't be available to be with whoever will be at the Capitol.
This is tricky. Oh, sorry. If no one else can go, I can certainly, read that statement and make it very clear that, like, hey, I'm putting my Human Rights Commissioner hat on. Okay, now I'm taking it off, because I will be doing work to promote ONI's workshops, which is another great thing we should talk about maybe another time, bringing that work, the anti-racism work, to the commission and the city and the council. So I'm happy to do that, but I would really like to see more people there and more people participating, and I don't want to take the spotlight, because I'd really love to have other people talking about this stuff.
My turn. This is Rita. So back to the things that we need to do. We have now Tricarico will reach out to Oni and gauge her reaction to us leveraging on her piece. I have not heard who is going to be writing about where we stand, as well as reach out to us if you have experienced any discrimination. Who's willing to do that piece?
I can type that based on what I'm hearing you all say. This is Gretchen, and then send it out to everybody and ask you to very quickly correct it so that it could be ready for Saturday.
Wonderful. That is great. So the second thing is this Saturday. Who is going to be there and what will our role be? I'm kind of guessing that we will set up the tent. And Gretchen, I do not know what you need to do at your end to get permission if we need to set up a tent, a human rights tent. And you know where my house is. You can drop things off at my home. I will be there to do the tabling. But if there is somebody who needs to be a speaker, that would not be me. I would be happy to stand there for a few hours. I have just recruited my other half to stand together with me at the table. And he's a big 6-footer, so I should probably feel really safe, right? So, and I would love it if another commissioner would be there, whether all the time or half of the time. It really depends on you. So I'm going to be there. And Debbie, if there are certain things that the police department wants to share in terms of the conversations that are happening between the NAACP and the conversations that will still continue to happen, I think, for me anyway, I'm not speaking for the rest of the commissioners, I'm very comfortable in having that kind of thing at the Human Rights Commission table on Saturday, because I see our role also as healing the rift between the people and the police department.
I don't know if anything exists other than the joint statement at this point, but certainly if there is any other documentation or pamphlets or anything that we could provide, I certainly would do that. I can check tomorrow and see if there's something else that exists.
That would be good.
This is Gretchen. I don't know that there's anything in written form, but what I was referring to earlier is just the ongoing Zoom meetings that are occurring. The NAACP and City of Kaiser and Sheriff's Office and Salem Police Department and City of Salem are participating in dialogue that's ongoing from the last NAACP meeting. So I know that that group who met maybe a week or so ago are continuing this dialogue. So that's not really a thing to hand out. It's just something to be aware of, that conversation is continuing. And yeah.
So given that I will be standing there at the table, I would love to have that written out. If it is only a script for me to kind of memorize when I talk to people, it may be, and think about this, I'm not saying that this is the way to go. Think about whether that can be kind of printed out and handed out to people as well. And maybe if it is going to be a handout, there could be information at the bottom that says contact human rights or contact the police department.
I also want to say that in regards of meetings, so there's also an event the following Saturday, which is the 20th. That one is in partnership with NAACP and ONI. And there's a planning meeting for that scheduled next Monday, which I don't know how much conversation is going to happen that we need to be a part of, but I just wanted to make you all aware that that's happening. If you don't wanted to participate either, for the HRC to know what's going on, or as a, concerned citizen, please let me know if you need an invite to that, or check out the event page from the link.
So is that open to the public, Tricarico?
The planning meeting, no, it's more just for people who are actively involved in the event. But if you want me to share, I mean, who knows what conversation could come out of that though, because it is the NAACP, right? That's talking about what are those conversations going to be. So, I'm happy to do a recap of that and share with the commission. I mean, and I'm happy to have conversations about this more. I'm trying to be respectful of the meeting time here, because I am involved in a lot of things right now. And I'm always, again, making that distinction clear that I'm not representing the HRC. But if that ever needs to change or we want that presence there, I'm happy to do that.
And also think about this and think about the appropriateness of it. Do we want those ongoing meetings that are planned for the near future to be mentioned in anything that can be in a written form that I can hand out to people on Saturday?
This is Tricarico. I think the NAACP does have ongoing public meetings. I don't know the exact date, but I do think that's worth mentioning. So I can ask Oni about that as well.
That would be good. So for this Saturday, I am offering to Debbie Police Department and to the Human Rights Commissioners to think about what we need to share out, what we want to share out on Saturday. That, well, one, get people to know that that we are actually taking this very seriously, and when we're taking it seriously to the extent that we are doing something about it. So I would want to be able to message to people who drop by at our table that we are doing something about it, and this is what we are doing. Right now, I do not have a concrete sense of what we are doing. So help me out with that. And I think that if we have something to hand out to people, at least it is something tangible for them to look at.
I think what I'm hearing so far is that you're a place to today receive issues and concerns and complaints. You are examining how to make that process more accessible and open so that it's more completely utilized, and that you're committed to look for ways to have this dialogue, as Oni put it so well in her statement, as individuals and also as a community, how to bring partners in who maybe, how to contribute as a bridge between partners, for example. I'm hearing all of those things as things that are important that all of you are doing and want to do.
Who wants to work with Gretchen on putting together some written stuff that could be handed out on Saturday? And the written stuff says, we hear you, we at the Human Rights Commission hear you, we are doing something, and this is what we plan to do. The respective authorities, for want of a better word, like NAACP and the police department are having dialogues, and this is what they have done, and this is what they will be doing going forward. I want to be able to use that table as a way to message out to the residents in Salem that we are taking this seriously and we are actually doing something. So I'm gonna need something in paper that says what are the things that we are doing to show that we are serious.
Hi Rita, this is Mike.
Hi Mike.
Protocol of saying my name. I hear you. I think that given the timeline, you maybe want to look at the materials that we already have. Those do make an invitation for people who've experienced hate or bias crime to get in touch with the commission. The reason that I would maybe advise against trying to rush a piece together, aside from Oni's statement, which I think is critical for us to kind of put together, is simply timing and the opportunity for the commission to comment, because I think it's important that whatever we put out as a commission has kind of the stamp of all of us on it. So my vote would be that we prepare Oni's statement with the additions that we discussed, and that maybe that be made printed available at the table, and then use our existing materials, which are in English and Spanish as well. That's the other nice thing about those materials. So that would be my vote. I'm unfortunately unable to go on Saturday, so I will be with you in spirit.
Thank you, Mike. I will channel your spirit. And I do love that suggestion. I was a little bit of an overachiever, and that this is Rita, in that I wanted stuff by Saturday. And I think Mike and Tricarico, you have worked with me. I tend to love to work really fast. So Mike, thank you for holding me down to reality and say, okay, we only have one day to do this. I love that. So I have.
Krista has something to say as well.
Oh, wait 1 minute before I forget. Gretchen, when you hand all the stuff over to me, make sure that you give me a big stack of your name cards, because you know I'm very good at handing those out. And Debbie, think about this as well. If you want to give me a whole stack of your card as well, I am willing to hand those out.
Okay, I can do that.
And I'm going to write a bunch of Human Commission cards using Nathan's name. Huh, Nathan? Sorry, Krista, I'm done.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone. I agree with what you're saying, Mike. I know that the timeline, we just don't have the time right now. I don't think that we will have enough time to make sure all the resources are as perfect as we would want them to be. But something I think that was great. I mean, it's something to consider for the future events. I think right now it would be a really good idea to get Wilma's approval. If she's okay with us to go ahead and do it, I think that's really good. I think that we can have some materials on the tables. If people have questions, if they want to ask anything, we should be open to comment. I need to be careful about, the exposure right now, because I know that like my daughter, she lives in Turkey, and they're I'm sorry about testing for COVID. If I wanted to see my daughter, I have to be careful with that. So that's the difficult part. So I'm going to support you guys from behind the scenes. So that was my concern. Before the meeting ends, I just wanted to see what everyone is in agrees with the short-term goals, who can make any reports, how do they make reports, and I know Gretchen's going to help with writing up materials and stuff like that. how we can meet with individuals if they have anything. And I know Tricarico, I think that you were saying that you will get that statement from Wilma. You have the statement and you're going to get that approval, right?
Yes, this is Tricarico. I just text her, but like I said, she's really busy. So I will try to get an answer as quickly as possible. We've been calling each other all day planning. So I will try to get that as soon as possible. I can imagine she would say no, but I definitely thank you, Bella, for pointing out that we need to get permission because that's important.
Yes, so this is Krista again. If anyone wants to add anything or if there's anything else to explain before we close this meeting, my hope is that Gretchen is going to follow up with something after this meeting in return in terms of deciding what we want to do moving forward, if we want to have another meeting again, or what we want to do as a Human Rights Commission.
This is Tricarico. I just wanted to say quickly, Rita, your question about what to say. I think it's okay to say that we are trying to get more involved in the community and we need people to show up, to contribute, to make those comments, right? Because like I know a lot of things are happening, but I can't do anything about it without those official reports or without those public comments. So just
Wonderful.
encouraging people to keep talking to us, keep talking to Gretchen, keep contacting us. That's going to help us do the work that we need to do.
Wonderful. All right, I know that I have a job to do this Saturday. Is anybody wanting to join me? No?
I would like to, I can't join you on
You cannot.
Saturday, unfortunately, but I would like to have a comment before this meeting ends. I know this meeting was a difficult meeting, and I would say in particular for Lieutenant Aguilar. You know, it must be hard to, you know, hear all of the comments when you dedicate all your life to public service and to Salem Police Department. So I really want to say thank you for your service and really share the appreciation that I have for you and for many of your colleagues that are doing a great job. So I just want to
Thank
say
you.
that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gretchen, when are you gonna send stuff to my house?
This is Gretchen. I missed the first word, Rita. I heard
Oh.
stuff to my house.
Yeah, when are you gonna send them to my house?
Oh, thank you. I need to think about that. I will certainly do it tomorrow. If it's
Fabulous.
okay, I'll text you. I need to look at the day and figure out when I can get those printed and gather everything and bring them, but I will tomorrow.
Fabulous, thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay, this is Krista again. Is there anything else to add? And also, Gretchen, is there anything that you want to add?
I think just a huge thank you to everybody. I've been preoccupied for a long time with how to hear people's experience and translate that into change and remedy. And I'm just so hoping that in this discussion we can see how to strengthen those systems. I'm craving specific opportunities for improvement in that area. So I'm really hoping that that can be something that we leverage. And I want to thank everybody for participating in this extra meeting.
Oh, one more thing before we leave. Do we have a role to play in organizing a public meeting between the police department and NAACP and the protesters?
I think this is Gretchen. I think they're all already actively having conversations. I
Good.
think it would be awkward for us to insert. They're all already talking actively. Debbie can correct me if I'm wrong, but just from the role I've been playing in the mayor's office, I see all of those conversations happening right now. I mean, I don't mean to, there's thousands of people involved and some people are individuals and not part of organizations. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but.
Yeah, this is Tricarico. That's a big point of the event on the 20th. because all three groups will be there essentially. So again, if people can come on that day, that would be really important because it'll be even harder for me to separate from my role in organizing that event, but I will do my best, I promise.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, but maybe Gretchen, if we could send a follow-up email after this meeting to see who can attend. Or maybe if everyone can just let Gretchen know and we can coordinate that way. Sorry, this is Bella.
What time on the 20th?
And Krista, I'm sorry, Krista's saying.
Sorry, sorry.
No, you're fine. And Gretchen, do you mind maybe sending a doodle poll, see if people are interested in setting up another meeting, maybe between this Saturday and the June 20th meeting?
This is Gretchen. I certainly can, but I don't know that I'm clear on what the agenda would be or what the purpose would be for the meeting. But I'd be happy, I certainly can, if I could just understand a bit more about the purpose.
Well, this is Krista again. If you guys feel that we need another meeting, just to continue to have these conversations, things that we wanted to, anything we wanted to hold by next month or before that.
This is Bella. I'm gonna just say maybe this is a conversation that we have about maybe like an ongoing work group. I don't know that we might have the time to make that decision today. So maybe if it's something we can think about and really address and talk about in our next meeting.
Okay, this is Krista here. So would everyone like to have, I think our next meeting is July 7th, is that correct? We could continue the conversation on July 7th. Sound good?
Sounds good to me. This is Rita.
This is Mike, and I have just slightly mixed feelings about timing, and I wonder if the chair and vice chair in particular, if you see things that happen in the community that you think over these next few weeks are similar to what happened the last few weeks, where there's a need for a quicker response by our group, then I would just ask you to please call a meeting or schedule a doodle poll or whatever, because I don't want the community to view us as non-responsive. And I do feel as though we have been a little bit later in our response than some other organizations, and it is important that we be seen as a responsive arm of the city.
This is Rita. To follow up on what Micah said, we have received comments from the public. It might not be a normal thing for us to do, but given that we are in very unusual circumstances, do we plan to do a reply to those who have actually made comments to the Human Rights Commission, even if it is an acknowledgement that we have received it and we hear them?
I certainly have done that and can do that again following this meeting. Absolutely.
And I know that it's been a few weeks. This is Rita again. Sorry, Mike, I just over here. So the last time that we met as Human Rights Commissioners, there was a gentleman who attended. Did we do a follow-up with him as a gesture of appreciation that he turned? I am being very, very respectful, especially respectful at this point because of the high emotions that is happening all around us. And the fact that that gentleman took time to come to our commission meeting the last time. Where do we stand in terms of how do we deal with that gentleman? Do we follow up with him and say, really appreciate you coming to us with that?
This is Gretchen. We sure can. I'd be happy to do that. Or if somebody else would like to do that, I can also facilitate that connection either way.
Mm-hmm. And also moving forward, right? Anytime that we have a commission meeting on something as emotional and as important as this, we got to think of how we are going to respond to that on a faster basis. You know, because what I was really uncomfortable about, what worries me a little bit, is that the gentleman came and spoke with us and then he left and just carried on. For me, there's a lack of closure there.
This is Mike, and I know we're trying to end the meeting, but I just wanted to add one more thing, which is that if we do get permission to use Oni's statement, perhaps we could send that statement back to those who have made public comment.
I love that, Mike. You've got great ideas tonight.
And this is Tricarico. I want to add, you know, Oni already does this work. Oni has been disrupting and dismantling systems. I think we need to bring her work to the commission and hold a workshop with her. I think that would help a lot of, first of all, the discomfort around these conversations, right? Like that's a big part of it, as well as help us understand what we need to work on and get us into action, because I'm not seeing a lot of action. And I really feel that in our role, we really need to be out in the community doing these more things. And I know everybody's working, I know everybody, you know, pandemic, all that stuff, but there's still a lot of things that we could be doing. And I think that would really help. And it would also be a very actionable step that we can share with the public of, hey, we've got this amazing anti-racist Black leader and we're taking her leadership and guidance to actually do something.
This is Gretchen. It just occurred to me, and I apologize. I think in a different environment, I forgot. I don't think we formally took a vote, and that might be important. And in the interest of time, maybe I would just ask, did anybody object to the idea that's on the table, which is with Oni's permission, having her statement and saying then the two additions, which are about how we pledge to take an active role in having conversations with those who want those conversations. And if anyone also has experiences of discrimination, we also are committed to working with you on resolving those. And I'll write that better, but that's what I think I heard. Does anybody object to something like that coming out from the commission, presuming Oni's support?
No objections.
Thank you. I just realized I should double check.
Would you rather we all say aye?
No, I'm okay. I just want to make sure.
Okay. This is Krista here, and I want to respond to Mike's comment. I do agree, and that's a good idea for us to monitor what is happening within the next few weeks, just to see how things go. And if we have more concerns, then we need to have more conversations. We can talk with Angelo and Gretchen, and if we feel like we need to, or if any of you feel the necessity for another meeting, please feel free to contact us and we can set something up before the next arranged meeting. So does that sound like a good plan? What are your thoughts? Yeah?
This is Bella. I agree with that, Krista. Thank you.
Okay, well, now I think we're over time and I don't want to keep anyone any longer, but does anybody have a last comment that needs to be said before we close the meeting? Okay, no comments. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I know this is really important, so I really appreciate your time that you've saved for this. And this is just the beginning of a very long conversation that we need to have again. So thank you everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And the meeting
Thank
is now
you.
closed.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Krista. Bye.